my name is NOVARIS, and today I would like to speak to you about one of the other alternative setups for the Magicka Sorcerer this patch. This current patch is the Clockwork City patch, so if you're watching this from the future, then there might be some more beneficial setups for you. But for now, this is the build I'm most likely to use in trials. The main setup is going to be around the perfected staff, and I will also talk about the imperfect asylum staff. Very beneficial items for any Magicka DPS, because every second force pulse or crushing shock is going to give 3 status effects. So it's burning, chilled and concussed. You can see above there the debuffs. And for the imperfect version, we're going to have just 3 crushing shocks or force pulses. So I'll be going over a few things for this setup. There will be some differences from the previous shock clench and the crystal fragments rotation. The main difference, of course, is that the damage is going to be substantially more. The cost is going to be different as well for the skills, so we're going to focus a bit more on Magicka recovery as well. But there are other differences as well. The skill layout is going to be slightly different, and I do use poisons for this setup. So first of all, I'd like to speak about the DPS Parses. So the EU parse is going to be slightly higher. I'm using the perfected staff on that server, and then on the North American server the imperfect version. Both of them will increase the DPS of the full trial group, so fret not about which staff you have. And the after I've done the DPS parses, I'll be showing you the gear setup, the skill layout, the champion point layout, and then finally the rotation for both the perfected and imperfect staffs.
It can be easy, holding fast to our dreams. City to city, moving at the same speed. Beauty is skin deep, looking for the in-between. It doesn't take just anything to bring out the extreme. We leave to keep score. For us it's run and go. For us it's all we know. It's run and go. We think ahead of the force out. We run and go. For us it's in our bones. It's run and go. Oh, we leave to keep score. For us it's run and go. For us it's all we know. It's run and go. We think ahead of the force out. We run and go. For us it's in our bones. It's run and go. It's running. It's running. It's running.
Okay, so the gear setup is as follows. For the North American server it will be slightly different, but on the EU server I'm using an Asylum's Perfected Inferno staff with an infused trait and shock enchantment. On the back bar I'll be using the Maelstrom's lightning staff, and I do have a poison active on this. So the poison gives me slightly more damage. It's important to use a Nirnhoned trait with the poison, just because if it's infused you won't be getting any benefit from that trait at all. This changes things slightly as well for the skills, and I will go over that more thoroughly. But basically it changes the Mage's Wrath and the shield. Both of those have to change bars, just because you're not getting the same weapon damage bonus. Okay, so then we're using 2 pieces of illambris. We want heavy and medium illambris so that we can get 5 necropotence. If you don't have 5 necropotence, but perhaps you've got jewellery, you could swap things round. It's just to have 3 Moondancer and 5 necropotence, and then 2 illambris. We want Magicka enchantments on all of the gear, and then spell damage enchantments on the jewellery. The skills are set up as follows. On the front bar we have the Daedric Prey, Volatile Familiar, Force Pulse or Crushing Shock, depending on what you're doing in the trial. So it'll be Crushing Shock if you have to interrupt enemies frequently. Mage's Wrath, Bound Aegis and Shooting Star. Both of these skills will increase our maximum magicka. Any sorcerer ability will increase our spell damage, just having it slotted there. And the Force Pulse, we want to have at least 1 destruction staff ability on both bars. This is to make most use out of the ancient knowledge, because it won't activate unless we have 1 on both bars, unfortunately. On the back bar we have Blockade of Storms, Liquid Lightning, Summon Volatile Familiar, and you might notice I've got both these skills, Bound Aegis and Volatile Familiar, twice. There's a good reason for that, and that's because you have to double slot every Daedric summoning ability for them to remain active. Apart from, of course, shield, that kind of thing. Okay, and then finally Thunderous Rage and Elemental Drain. The reason we have Thunderous Rage here is for the massive AoE damage, but also single target wise it does more damage than your Shooting Star ultimate. And the Elemental Drain we're using for testing purposes. Usually you would use a shield in place of this. I prefer to use Hardened Ward, but you'd be just as well using the other morph. I'll go briefly as well over the attributes. So I have 64 points into Magicka. As you can see, 16.4k health is not fantastic, but in a trial situation hopefully the tank will be wearing Ebon, and in that case 17.4k health is acceptable, especially on a Magicka Sorcerer. Okay, I'll go briefly over the champion points. The main tree I think to consider is the blue tree, mage tree. On the Apprentice we have 44 into Elfborn, 56 into Elemental Expert, and 32 into Spell Erosion. Now we have 32 points into Spell Erosion here because if we add the Spell Erosion there, along with Mundus Stone, which is meant to simulate some of the buffs that you'd be getting in a trial, along with some of the other passives, for example in the Destruction Staff we have 10% ignored with staff abilities here, and also the light armor passive as well. So down here we have nearly 5k spell penetration, which you wouldn't get if you were in medium armor. So there's quite a lot of penetration, spell penetration just from that. So we don't need too many points in here to make the most use of this setup. We want 56 points into Elemental Expert because we'll be having quite a lot of elemental damage and magic damage outgoing. Also Elfborn, we're going to want quite a lot of damage to come from our critical strikes. Master at Arms is incredibly important as well, more so with the crystal fragments rotation and that kind of thing. You could put more points in if you were doing that, but for this, still quite a lot of the attacks are going to be direct damage. And then 75 points into Thaumaturge. Most of you will know this already, but for those who don't, the Exploiter passive will give you 10% more damage to off-balanced enemies, and we're going to have a lot of off-balanced just because of the staff. The staff is going to give us concussion every second use, and on the North American server, for me, with the imperfect staff, it's every 3 pulses. Okay, and I'll go briefly over the rest of the champion points, but please feel free to have a good look at the description below this video. A bit more of that information will be shown there for you. This should also change for different trials. Some trials you won't need Hardy, some you won't need Elemental Defender. So just try and make sure that you're using the right setup for each trial. And in this point you might notice as well, why have I put 25 points extra into Arcanist and Tenacity? That's just because I don't have much issues with break free and that kind of thing, but that also depends greatly on what trial it is, because you only get 1% more for the last 25 points in both of those. Okay, finally I want to speak to you about the rotation aspect of this build. I'm also going to go on the North American server in a minute and show you that side of things as well. But for now I'll show the perfected setup. Credits for this rotation will be shown below in the video description. This rotation for the perfected stuff is not my own, and I'll try and indicate the original creator, although I'm not sure if the video below will be the original creator. It's one of the first that I've seen to use this rotation. Okay, so starting off, we do things very similarly to any other rotation. We have our drain and our pet and our ultimate ready. So take the potion, allow that to get about halfway, and once it's about halfway it means that we can use the potion again more easily. In a trial situation, things like Magicka recovery won't matter quite as much because we'll have access to synergies. But here it doesn't hurt to have stage 4 vampirism, and also I'm using Clockwork Citrus Filet right now, so you get a healthy amount of Magicka recovery that way. So apply the drain, activate your pet, ultimate, liquid lightning, and then you start doing light attacks between each skill. The first time around you do it, you're going to do 4 force pulses or 4 crushing shocks depending on what you have, and then the second time around we're only going to do 2, and that's just so we can get in a heavy attack. So I can slow this down slightly as well. We're going to do a light attack between each skill, and that's how you animation cancel between each skill. Okay, so I'll go over the full rotation. I think that might not have been clear enough. But basically, you use your drain, activate the ultimate, then you activate your pet, you do liquid lightning, a light attack, wall of elements, bar swap, light attack, Daedric prey, light attack, pet, light attack, force pulse, and we're going to do this 4 times. And then bar swap. Then we do a light attack, liquid lightning, light attack, wall of elements, bar swap, light attack, Daedric prey, light attack, pet, light attack, force pulse. We do this twice this time. bar swap, and then straight into heavy. And the purpose behind this is because we still need some extra magicka back from that heavy attack, but we only have to do it every second rotation because we're not using max health, max magicka food. We're going to have a really decent amount of magicka recovery, so we don't have to worry about doing it every single rotation, every 8 seconds. We're going to do it every 16 seconds instead. The reason we fit in 4 force pulses, apart from giving the effect twice, is that the heavy attack takes 2 seconds and activating every other skill takes 1 second. So the light attack is about 1 second. Sorry, the skill is about 1 second, and then the heavy attack's about 2 seconds. The drain doesn't really fit in there, but what I tend to do is whenever I'm heavy attacking, that's when I reapply the drain, and it tends to be around then that it's needed. So, yep, that's the full parse for the perfected asylum staff. I will now show you the non-perfected staff. Okay, so now we're on the North American server. I can have a look at this character. The main difference with this one is we are using a regular Asylum's Inferno staff. We still have poisons on the back bar and a Nirnhoned staff. All of the rest of the gear is still the same, so illambris and necropotence. However, I am using infallible ether instead of Moondancer. The 2-piece bonus is going to suffer there slightly for me. I am using the Clockwork Citrus Filet, and I'm a stage 4 vampire again. Okay, so the skills are slightly different here. That's just because we're going to have to make space for the timing is going to be slightly off. So because we're going to be doing 3 force pulses or crushing shocks, we're going to replace that 4th one with this skill. It's the Mage's Guild skill, Scalding Rune. So that has the opportunity to give the burning status effect again. I felt this was the best skill to use for more than one reason. It gives us more max magicka on the front bar, just like Inner Light does in the back bar. We don't get that crit bonus, but what we do get is the empowering of the first move that we use afterwards. So you will have seen in the parse that start was slightly different. That's because if I use the drain, I activate the pet, then I could use Inner Light, but I could also use the Scalding Rune, and it doesn't activate straight away, as you'll see. It activates in a moment. So within this period of time, I easily have the ability to activate my ultimate, and you see the furthest buff on the right there for 4 seconds. That gives me empowers my next move, basically. So I want to use that on my ultimate. One of the issues I've had with the North American server has been slight lag, a slight delay. Some of the skills don't activate as they should. The liquid lightning, but you can still get 40k plus quite easily with this setup, perhaps quite a bit more. So it's just another option from the Moondancer and the the clench and the crystal fragments rotations. So this rotation goes as follows. You're going to use your drain, activate pet, use Scalding Rune, and then use the back bar ultimate, liquid lightning, light attack, wall of elements, bar swap, light attack, Daedric prey, light attack, pet, and then do 3 of these force pulses or crushing shock, activate the Scalding Rune again, and then go back bar, activate your 2 AoEs, front bar again. This time you do 1 Scalding Rune and then heavy attack. And that's meant to simulate what you would have with the perfected asylum staff, but it will be slightly different, that's all. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed the clip, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I have a Facebook page as well, which I'll discuss the builds with you in more detail if you want to message me there. If not, then I'll try and get back to you as quickly as I can on YouTube as well. So thank you very much for the support, everybody, and I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you.